The Washington Commanders dropped another game, but that is by far one of the smallest storylines coming out of Week 15. We talk about Sam Howell being pulled in the fourth quarter coming up next on Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This is your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders. And thanks so much for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or your first view today and every day, especially post-game when we come to you live from most every stadium in the National Football League. We are coming to you from beautiful SoFi Stadium. You can see the giant Halo big screen behind me. Unfortunately, it's no longer on because, well, the game is over, as you know, and that's why we are talking. You can also continue this conversation with me by becoming a Locked On Commanders Insider. Become a Lock Insider by going to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Commanders. Get news, insight, analysis, rumors, pretty much anything and everything you can think of directly from me on your cell phone through text message. No sorting, no hashtags, no nothing like that. Again, joinsubtext.com/Locked On Commanders to sign up. You can also subscribe to this show for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast. And I'm your host, David Harrison, on Twitter at dharrison82, on threads at dharrison_82, credential member of the media covering the Washington Commanders for CommanderCountry.com, part of Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, here with you every Monday through Friday, especially after game days and every day as you're always coming through as well. And I appreciate you for your continued support for the program. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedon. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. On today's episode, we're going to break down the Washington Commanders 28-20 loss to the Los Angeles Rams. We are going to talk about three topics that my insiders want to discuss following this game, but we are going to start with the topic that everybody is talking about following this game, and that, of course, is the apparent benching of quarterback Sam Howell for veteran backup Jacoby Brissett. And that came with about 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter. At the time, the Washington Commanders were trailing 28-7, basically cruising for their 10th loss or toward their 10th loss of the NFL season. Pretty much seemed all in hand, and that was going to be it. That ended Sam Howell's night with a passing line of 11 for 26, 102 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and a 50.5 QBR, quarterback rating, at the end of this whole thing. Jacoby Brissett comes in, and immediately eyebrows go up. Not because it's the first time Jacoby Brissett has come in. It's not the first time that this has happened, but because of how much time was left on the clock. And that basically immediately leaves you with the impression that this is a benching, not a pulling for any other reason, but a benching. And then Jacoby Brissett comes in on his very first drive, completes 4 passes on 4 attempts, and hits an explosive pass to star wide receiver Terry McLaurin for a touchdown. The Washington Commanders defense comes up with a quick 3 and out. They get the ball back, and Jacoby Brissett leads the offense on another touchdown drive. That one a little bit more complicated. There were some flags. There was some resetting of downs. There were a number of things, but ultimately he connects with Curtis Samuel in the end zone, and that makes it a 28-20 game after a botched extra point. We will talk about those functions here later in the episode. Don't worry, we're definitely going to get to that. Jacoby Brissett's night was done after that. They did try to go for an onside kick, weren't able to recover. The Los Angeles Rams run out the clock and win the game, but Jacoby Brissett takes the headlines because he finishes 8 for 10 on 2 drives, 124 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 157.9 quarterback rating. He outthrew Sam Howell by 22 yards and only played in the last 9 minutes of the game. And obviously you're not playing the entire 9 minutes of the game. You're just playing in the last 9 minutes of the game. And again, brought the Washington Commanders back to within 1 score of tying the game and sending their matchup with the Los Angeles Rams into overtime. I mean, you compare it not just to Sam Howell, but on the other side of this matchup, Matt Stafford, who I believe he started the game 11 for 11. If you know, it was around there, if not exactly there. But he finishes 25 for 33, 258 yards passing, and 2 touchdowns himself, a 118 quarterback rating. Listen, I mean, Jacoby Brissett finishes, 124 yards or so, 129 or so yards shy of Matt Stafford, and Matt Stafford played the entire game. against the Washington Commanders defense that was giving up chunk plays, especially to begin the second half. But at the end of the day, what Ron Rivera said in the post-game press conference is that Sam Howell was not benched. He said that Sam Howell was pulled to protect him. I asked him a clarifying question about that matter later on in the post-game press conference. I asked Ron, I said, are you talking about protecting Sam Howell from the game flow? Because obviously the game was not going well. I believe they had 5 3-and-outs up to that point as an offense. Or were you talking physically because Tyler Larson, the starting center, and Charles Leno Jr., the starting left tackle, both left the game with injuries leading up to the point where Sam Howell got pulled. And Ron basically said it was both. It was a situation where he said, the defense was pinning their ears back. He didn't want anything crazy to happen, is what he initially said. When I asked him the clarifying question, he said it was kind of a combination of the two things. It was, again, similar type answers. I was trying to get more into the specifics of it, but that's pretty much the gist of it. And then when we talked to, Sam at the podium, he said that, the conversation on the sideline was, hey, look, the game is what it is. At this point in time, we're just going to flip to Jacoby and we're going to, move forward with the rest of this game. Speaking to Jacoby Brissett in the locker room after the game, which, again, it's kind of symbolic that they didn't send him to the podium, but they had him talk at his locker. But he said, same thing. Like, he was asked directly, like, hey, what do you say to Sam Howell when he gets benched like that? And Jacoby stopped and said, well, first of all, I wouldn't call it that. Talk about these other things. And Jacoby said, at the end of the day, this isn't indicative of who Sam Howell is. He gave Sam a vote of confidence as a veteran, said he's a good young player, but he's a very young player. He's going to get better, and he's going to play really good football in this league for a really long time, which is a super great thing for the veteran to say. But also, look, I think at the end of the day, I believe Ron. With this whole thing, I do believe Ron Rivera. I'm going to get into more of why I believe Ron Rivera from a long view type of perspective, but just in the immediate, I don't think Ron Rivera had any other intentions other than, let's get it, it's obviously not going well. And let's get him out of there before something really wonky happens and he just gets, pile drive by Aaron Donald or, catches a cold blitz from one side of the line or the other. Again, they've got their backups in multiple positions. Sadiq Charles was getting in there his first game back off of IR. And so I do believe when Ron Rivera says that the intent behind pulling Sam Howell out of this game against the Los Angeles Rams was to protect him, I don't think that's lip service. I don't think that's coach speak. I think that is the exact situation. Now, what's going to keep this conversation going and what's going to keep it alive, you're going to read about it. Obviously, we're talking about it here at the top of this episode. We might end up talking about it later on in the week, especially the mailbag episode. If you guys or a Commanders fan or two ask me, does Jacoby Brissett or should Jacoby Brissett be the starter moving forward? Obviously, it's going to be a question that I answer for you guys. So the reason these things are happening and the reason so many people now have this in their minds is because, again, Jacoby Brissett came out with the first team receivers. Like, this wasn't a second string for first string swap. So that's kind of significant because usually when you see the starting quarterback pulled, and oftentimes it's a starting unit gets pulled. But Terry McLaurin is still out there running routes, Jahan Dotson, all the like. And then not only that, but Jacoby Brissett is going up against the same defense that has stifled Sam Howell's offense the entire day. And wonky stuff, and they're pinning their ears back and all that. And honestly, on the touchdown pass that Jacoby threw to Terry McLaurin, he took a pretty big hit on that pass. So that kind of illustrates what Ron Rivera was talking about. But because of this performance that Jacoby puts up in 2 drives worth of football, compared to what Sam did, that's going to be the conversation. That's going to be why this conversation's opened up. Like, if Jacoby Brissett came out and threw 2 for 10 for 46 yards, maybe one explosive, no touchdowns, and the Commanders lose this thing 28-7, it's really a non-conversation. It's like, well, why'd they pull him so early? We asked Ron. He says, no, he wasn't benched. It just was kind of in hand, and there was no reason to risk his health or anything crazy going on. It is what it is. It would just dissipate. But because Jacoby came in and did what he did, this conversation is going to endure. You're going to hear about it on the radio if you're local to the DMV. If you listen to other podcasts, you're going to hear about it as well. But for this episode, that's pretty much where we're going to leave it. This is what happened. Here's how it went down. Here's what Ron Rivera said after the game. Here's what Jacoby said after the game. And here's what Sam said after the game. Again, Sam admitting, he's got to be better. He's got to do better. They've got to do better as a unit. But he's confident moving forward. And again, he was told on the sideline, this is, not that he was told he is the starter moving forward. He said that he hadn't had that conversation yet. But based on the sideline, he was told, like, hey, we're just going to shut it down for this week. Put Jacoby in there to finish the game. And so for now, that is the official message. We will hear from Ron again on Monday via Zoom. I will be flying, unfortunately, so I will not be able to participate. But as soon as I land, I'll obviously dive into that. And then we're back out in Ashburn on Wednesday. We'll talk to Sam again. We'll talk to Ron again. and we'll take a look at who's taking the first team reps. And unless something amazing happens or drastic happens between now and then, I expect it will be Sam Howell that we see out there with the first team offense coming up on Wednesday. But now we're going to get into how the rest of this game went down, look at the rest of the players, some of the things that we wanted to see. We're going to go back through our keys to a victory. Obviously, the Commanders didn't get the victory, so it's very likely they didn't satisfy a lot of those keys. We will break all of that down coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible for you to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Plus, LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place for you to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows the small businesses are wearing so many hats and it might not have the time or resources to hire. So thankfully with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and it's easy. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Continuing this conversation on Locked On Commanders following a 28-20 loss by the Washington Commanders to the Los Angeles Rams. We're going to dive in now to our keys to victory that we dropped at the end of the week, talk about how this game really went down real quick. I do want to take a look at the live chat. We got the Hawk TV in here saying it's been a rough 2023 NFL season. It really has. It has been not only a tough season, but tough for the reasons that we did not expect it to be. Now, obviously, lately, the offense has not been doing well, and that's kind of what we expected. In the beginning of the season was a little bit of growing pains with a young quarterback, a new offensive coordinator, a new system even for the experienced guys, while the defense was supposed to be the teeth of this unit and really kind of take care of business, keep them in games early while the offense got up to speed. And then the hope was during the middle part of the season, they would get up to speed and the two sides would marry and, potentially this team could threaten. I think I predicted like 9 wins in the beginning of the season, so obviously that's not going to happen. But it's not gone the way that anybody expected it, including the team themselves. Jacob says, "What do you mean Sam is out?" Sam is great, especially with a better coach. You said, no, Sam's not out, Jacob. So that's kind of the point of the conversation is that Sam was, again, pulled from the game, but he's not going to be benched. He's not benched. He got pulled. He didn't get benched, and that's basically the point of the conversation. That is the official word. Again, we'll talk to Ron again on Monday. We'll go out there again Wednesday, but I don't believe that anything other than what is being said is true. I think Sam, again, got pulled from the game. They felt like basically it was out of hand. It wasn't something they were going to be able to pull back into. So Jacoby came in to kind of help just secure the rest of the week and move forward. And that's how Jacoby kind of put it is, hey, look, just kind of put this down, start focusing on next week against the Jets. And he goes in there and finishes out. So David basically is saying, no, Sam is not done for the season. In fact, I don't expect Sam Howell to not be the starting quarterback for any of the last 3 games, the Jets, the Cowboys, Jets, Niners, then Cowboys. I expect Sam Howell to be the starting quarterback in all 3 of those games. And I will tell you why later on coming up in today's episode in our 3 topics portion of the show. But now let's get to the game a little bit more. And again, we talked about our keys to victory going back to last week. So our first key to victory when looking at this matchup was don't abandon the run just because Brian Robinson was not playing in this game. Again, Brian Robinson, unfortunately with a hamstring injury, was out for this contest against the Los Angeles Rams, unable to play. So obviously Antonio Gibson expected to be the starting running back, followed by Chris Rodriguez, the freshman, the rookie 6th-round draft pick out of Kentucky, and then Jonathan Williams was elevated from the practice squad to help secure that running back room, give him 3 options. Jonathan Williams unfortunately did leave the game with a concussion, so that's something that we'll monitor to see if Brian Robinson's even going to be able to return against the New York Jets or not. But for the meantime, we'll have to kind of keep an eye on that. Antonio Gibson, however, 4 carries, 15 yards. They're shutting the lights off on me here in SoFi. I don't think I can get them to turn back on. Sorry about that. But Antonio Gibson, 4 carries, 15 yards, all of those coming in the first half. He did not get another carry in the second half. He did get 1 target, 1 reception, finished with 5 of them total for 20 yards. on the day. Certainly not the workload that I think anybody expected for Antonio Gibson, leading the way in carries for the Washington Commanders running back room. Chris Rodriguez, who had 10 of them for 35 yards, along of 11, 3.5 yards per average. That average was actually up by like 4.6, 5.1 up until really late in the game when they got, again, the second touchdown drive that Jacoby Brissett led the team on. They got down there first and goal and all those things, and the Rams defensive line was just able to outbully the Commanders offensive line, and Chris was stopped for a couple of no gains, a couple of losses, and that really kind of torpedoed his average. But really, when you look at his total functional game average, it was actually much better, more closer to the 4.5 yard per carry type of work day for him. Sam Howell ran the ball 3 times, none of them designed, 22 yards, averaging 7.3 yards per game or per carry. Jacoby Brissett scrambled for a couple as well, and then again, Jonathan Williams finishes with 1 carry, -2 yards on that. So, the Washington Commanders absolutely abandoned the running game without Brian Robinson. Not fully abandoned it. They did end up still with 10, 14, 15 combined, designed runs. But when you got 3 running backs back there, that number should be definitely more towards like the 25. And really, you can't even blame game flow. I'm sure Eric Bieniemy will be asked about it on his Thursday press conference. But I mean, you look into the third quarter, going into the third quarter, this thing is 13-0. I mean, after the first Rams drive, it's 20-0. But you still got 13, 14 minutes left in the third quarter, and you're down less than 3 touchdowns, full touchdowns. You're down less than 21 points. That's not time to just panic and go straight pass mode, just 100%. And I don't know how many passes were called. I haven't done that math yet. Passes called versus runs in the second half versus passes called versus run in the first half. But outside of, again, the goal-to-go scenarios, with Jacoby Brissett in there, Eric Bieniemy, certainly went more pass-heavy than we wanted to see him go without Brian Robinson. And I think part of that is just kind of shows the confidence that Eric has in Brian Robinson, how much Brian Robinson's role has grown within the offense. But you still want to see Antonio Gibson, Chris Rodriguez kind of get that work done. And I talked to Chris on the side after the game, and I'm going to write something for Commander Country on Sports Illustrated's, Fan Nation, just because I like him. I like the work he's putting in. I like the growth that he's showing. So I want to shine a light on that, even though it ended up in a loss. 6th-round pick, leading a team in carries for a week is pretty significant for a young man's career. So I do want to write some stuff about that. But yeah, I think you have to come away a little disappointed with how much Eric Bieniemy abandoned the run without Brian Robinson in the lineup. Key number 2, keep 5 more DBs on the field. Look, at the end of the day, I didn't sit there and chart, each snap to see how many DBs they had on the field. But the Los Angeles Rams essentially spread out the Commanders' defense and forced them to play that kind of coverage. So I'm pretty sure that was, the majority of the snaps anyway. But it doesn't really matter if you don't match. The operative word, hey, there we go. The operative word to zone match defense is you have to match. You know what I mean? And that's kind of when you talk about zone match defense, and every day, as we talked about this before, everything becomes man at some point in time. You might start off in zone, but once a guy enters your zone, you latch on to him. Now you're in man coverage. Too many times, especially on short outbreaking routes, we see Rams receivers wide open when they run through a guy's zone and the guy just doesn't latch. There's one rep specifically, not to pick on him because he certainly wasn't the only one making this mistake, but Benjamin St-Juste on a third down play. He's got a short flat zone there on the defensive right side, so the Rams' offensive left side. I think it was Cooper Kupp runs a route right through his zone, and Ben kind of hesitate, kind of like goes that way, but he's keeping his eye on Matt Stafford, which I get. You're in zone, but you're in zone match. When that guy comes through your zone, your job is to latch onto him and carry him. Try to keep your eyes on the quarterback if you can, but job number 1 is to stay with the receiver. He doesn't do it, and Cooper Kupp ends up again. I believe it was Cooper Kupp ends up with a big gain and a first down, and that's just not good football. Obviously, Cooper ends up wide open with another play for that touchdown in the beginning of the second half, and again, just not playing the fundamentally sound football. And this is why we have these conversations of people talk about, the coaching staff just isn't teaching these guys. And there are certain things that this defense is doing that it's not coaching. Like, I promise you, it's not coaching. I promise you, there's not a coaching staff in the world that says, hey, when this guy comes through your zone, just let him go. That's just literally not the principle of zone match defense. But the problem, and that's not me, saying the coaches, aren't, going to get fired or anything like that. Because at the end of the day, if you're not capable of getting these guys to do the job they need to do, then you've got to get replaced anyway. Whether it's not about blame or fault, it's about responsibility, and the coach staff is certainly responsible. But a lot of mistakes there, so it doesn't matter. Again, you can have 10 DBs on the field and 5 pass rushers and play illegally, but if nobody's covering, nobody's matching, it's not going to matter. Last key, was let Terry run. Stop tying him down to hitches. We saw more, I believe. Again, I haven't been able to count on my chart every single route run, but I think we certainly saw better production out of Terry McLaurin than we have, as of late throughout the rest of the season. Certainly when Jacoby Brissett came in, but at the end of the day, Terry finishes with 12 targets, 6 catches, 141 yards, and a touchdown. His long was 48. I think he had about 60 to 70 yards receiving when Sam was pulled from the game on 3 or 4 receptions. I think it's probably 3 receptions. So he was definitely heavily involved in the game plan. Jacoby Brissett was able to get him the ball better there towards the end of it, but certainly want to continue to see Terry being a focal point of the Washington Commanders' plan of attack. 3 topics of conversation, including special teams mistakes, why Sam Howell will finish the season as the starter of the Washington Commanders football team, and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers, you get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if the team that you bet on the money line wins. The Philadelphia Eagles are minus 156 favorites to beat the Seattle Seahawks on Monday night. That's on the money line. So if you think the Eagles are going to pull it out, drop $5 on that minus 156 money line bet on the Eagles on Monday night. If they do it, you get $150 in bonus bets. If you think the Seahawks are going to do it, I think they're plus 256, something like that. Take that money line bet for $5. If they pull off the upset, you get $150. So if you've been thinking of joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action than now. The app is incredibly easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Get winning with the rest of this NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the National Football League. Last segment here on this episode of Locked On Commanders. We're going to get to 3 topics of discussion. Again, every game day, I text my insiders. I say, hey, guys, give me 3 topics of discussion you want to have at the end of today's program. And I go from that list, and I pull the 3 that are either majority or the most kind of conversational, and we go from there. Before we get there, let's go back through the live chat here. Ravi coming through. I got a bunch of insiders in the live chat, so I love that. I love when my insiders and everydayers and live chatters are kind of coming through here. Robbie, it's a bad game all around. The last 13 points were garbage time points. To a certain extent, you're 100% right, and I think that comes in the evaluation as well that I anticipate that we will have Wednesday during the mailbag. Jacob talking about B-Rob being really missed. Yeah, he's absolutely, truly missed on the field there today. William coming through saying what makes him worry is that this game will make the owners move away from Sam, leave the O-line in shambles, and it's yet another doomed to fail quarterback. Hey, I don't blame you for having that kind of at this point. I will call it paranoia, just because we don't have like Josh Harris or anything out here making statements. But I certainly don't blame you for that. PG says time to draft our franchise quarterback. I'm gonna go ahead and disagree, but we got a lot of time to talk about drafts. So PG, stick around, and we'll certainly have that conversation as we move forward. And then, Will says we need tackles. And yeah, I mean, we being the Washington Commanders, absolutely 1000% need tackles. We, as in the Washington Commanders, which is not we, but they and us. Everybody wants to watch. Everyone wants to coach. Everyone wants to play with a long snapper that will stop dirtying balls. And Cameron Cheeseman, listen, Cameron's a great dude. You know what I mean? I've had a handful of conversations with him over the last couple of years, and they've all been pleasant. They've all been good. No bad interactions whatsoever. But enough is enough, man. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know what happened. During training camp, Tress Way told us that Cheese was working on something new, like a new grip. Later on, special teams coordinator Nate Kazzer said that wasn't the case. Look, I don't know what, I'll tell you right now, I believe Tress. You know what I mean? I'm not saying Nate Kazzer is a liar. I think maybe he was trying to coach speak it up a little bit, and that's fine. It's his job, is to protect his guys. But at the end of the day, man, especially when your snaps are putting your punter in harm's way, and you're talking about he might, he's one of the few punters in NFL history that's a face of the franchise. Like, there's not a lot of punters out there that are fan favorites, and Tress Way is one of those guys. He's one of those guys for a reason. You put him in harm's way because of a bad snap, and this isn't the first time. That's going to ruffle some feathers. You know what I mean? And there's a video circulating after the last botch snap that Cameron Cheeseman has that looks like Ron Rivera. If you read his lips saying, it's time. I think maybe he's saying next time or something. And at the end of the day, like, it's dangerous to kind of get into that because you don't really know what the conversation is being had and what's being said. But a lot of people are just kind of done with Cameron at this point in time. The fact that they traded up to draft him is just kind of making things worse. And I can't say I disagree. You know what I mean? You're especially when you're skipping balls, and Tress Way is doing everything he can, man. So, I mean, if you watch some of these snaps, he's getting his hand under these things. He's still getting them out there for Joey Sly to have a chance to make these kicks. And it's gotten to the point where it's ridiculous. Is it a loyalty thing from Ron Rivera? It could be. It could certainly be a loyalty thing. I think if it's a loyalty from Ron Rivera, I don't think it's necessarily a loyalty to Cameron Cheeseman specifically as much as it is loyalty to allow the special teams coordinator and then the special teams unit, the three guys most heavily involved, Joey Sly, Tress Way, and then obviously Cameron Cheeseman, to kind of give their input and respect that. And I think that Tress and Joey, are kind of like in Cameron's corner and saying like, hey, no, like, let's keep this guy, let's work with him. But, if we're being professionals and we're being honest brokers, which I think, they need to be, I think it's enough. Enough is enough at the end of the day. The only way you can justify it is saying, playoffs are out, so what's the harm? Let them try to work through it. And let's see if we can fix this in the last 3 weeks of the season. But at the same time, man, like, you're putting your punter in harm's way, man. Like, you're putting your kicker in harm's way. Like, if they've got to hesitate to fix a snap, that's letting defenders get in there. That's how you lead to, to hits and broken things and all this other stuff, unless you're just going to give them the guidance of, look, if he messes up the snap, don't put yourself in harm's way. Just dirt it, get it out of there, eat it, whatever you got to do. Yeah, I mean, something at the end of the day, something's got to give. I go back to Sam Fortier of the Washington Post comments, with the defense specifically, as if nothing changes, how can the players be expected to change? And I would say the same thing here. Jacob saying that, long snapper is an issue in the preseason. Yeah, absolutely. You know what I mean? And I think, the time to replace the long snapper is long gone. And I'm not going to sit here and say like, Cameron Cheeseman is responsible for 10 losses and all that stuff. Like, that's not the case, but certainly hasn't been helping. And 3 phases are important. They worked out those 4 guys earlier in the season. I don't know how those workouts went, but they certainly got some information on some other long snappers. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. That move could be made as early as tomorrow. And then those guys, so that those guys can come in Tuesday, come in and start snapping and getting worked out. So second topic, so a lot of my insiders had a problem with the early 4th and short going for it. So not 4th and short going for it towards midfield, but more so 4th and short going for it while in field goal range in a 3-0 game. So that came in the first quarter. The Washington Commanders' first drive of the game, 3 and out. Second drive, they drive down the field a little bit, get some yards, had to convert a 4th down. Then they end up with another 4th down. And again, you're down 3, you're in field goal range. At this point, Cameron Cheeseman hadn't had any of those skipped snaps, so I'm not going to include those in the conversation here. I absolutely would have kicked the field goal in that situation, just me personally. And typically, I'm not really a big go for it on 4th early in the game type of guy anyway, but I liked the first 4th down attempt because, again, you're not in field goal range. You're just outside of really efficient punt range, and you just came off of a 3 and out possession. So I don't have a problem with putting it on the line and saying, look, go out there and convert this 4th down, keep moving the ball. But once you're in scoring range and you're in range to tie a game on the road, a game you desperately need to win to keep your playoff hopes alive, because, again, I know what we all say, what we all think, but the team was still very much coming out here trying to win this game. I think you take the 3 points, and that's really all there is to say about it. Just not a decision I agree with. And then finally, why won't Sam Howell be benched for the rest of the season? So again, Ron Rivera, in case you joined us late, Ron Rivera saying Sam Howell wasn't benched. He was pulled. He was pulled to protect him. The offensive line was getting banged up. The game flow was just not healthy for a young quarterback, so he pulled him to protect him. I believe him. I think Sam Howell is the starter. Ron said he is the starter. I believe him. I don't think that's going to change between now and Wednesday. I believe that Sam Howell will start against the New York Jets, and I believe he'll start against the San Francisco 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys. Why? Because at the end of the day, when Ron Rivera leaves this organization, as we all assume he will, the only, and this is going to sound very trifling to a lot of people, but the only real saving grace he's going to have for his quote-unquote legacy as a Washington Commanders leader is the atmosphere around the organization, which has gotten healthier from a workplace environment situation, right? But also from the talent on the team. And kind of the best thing that can happen to a fired head coach is for the next head coach to come in and have immediate success with his players, because now he can go, if he goes to other interviews or goes to other coaches or GMs and kind of say, like, look, we had the talent. Here's where I went wrong, and here's where I've learned to not go wrong again. So now let me put the talent back on the field, and I'll fix it this time. And owners and GMs will buy into that. So for Ron Rivera, Jacoby Brissett, is not the way that he's going to lead the Washington Commanders. And then in 2024, if this team is doing well, he'll get to say, I did that. The only way that's going to happen is with Sam Howell. That's the only way this is going to happen. So every snap that Sam Howell gets, every bit of efficiency that Sam Howell demonstrates, every chance that Sam Howell has to go out there and learn more lessons, that's going to help Sam next year. And look, if the new GM, new coach, whatever comes in and they just completely erase it and just say, we're not going with Sam, we're not going with Jacoby, we're going with Drake May, we're going with Caleb Williams, we're going with anybody, then it doesn't matter. But if the new staff is going to do that with Sam Howell, they're going to do that with Jacoby Brissett. The only chance Ron has of that not happening is Sam Howell. That's it. That's the only chance he has of that happening. And if the Washington Commanders have 10 wins next year with 70% of the roster being the roster that Ron Rivera built, then Ron Rivera will be able to walk out there to other GMs, other coaches, other owners, and hang his hat on, look, I left a really talented group with the Washington Commanders. We didn't make it work as a coaching staff. I didn't make it work as a head coach because of these lessons I've since learned. These lessons, plus the already proven talent evaluation that I have, will help me get your team on the right path. That is how these coaches want to leave their programs. So that's it. That's why Sam, that's not the only reason. I think Sam, when Ron says he believes in Sam and sees the potential in him, I believe him. But at a bare minimum, and I know it sounds kind of self-serving, and I'm not saying this is what Ron said. I'm not reporting that this is a source. This is me saying that I believe this is one reason Sam Howell will absolutely finish the season as the starting quarterback of the Washington Commanders. I love everybody for chatting in the live chat. If you've got a question or a comment that I did not wasn't able to address in this episode, by all means, make sure you submit it for our mailbag episode coming up on Wednesday. In the meantime, if you got any questions or comments, throw them in the YouTube comment section or text me directly by becoming a Lock Insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to become a Lock Insider. Make Locked On Sports Today your second view of the day. Go to Locked On Sports Today and subscribe to the first ever national sports streaming channel. As always, thank you for coming through. Until we speak again, please, if you're out and about, be safe, be kind, and I'll see you next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.